But now that that is out of the way, there is nothing to get in the way of the Rainbow Rocks hype train. See you next week. Wow, look at that. It seems the portal is able to transform non-organic materials as well. Fascinating. This will definitely require some more research. Hang on. Ah, crap, they took my horn. I was hoping it wouldn't catch that. Okay, where was I? Oh, right, Rainbow Rocks. That's right, the sort of awaited sequel to Equestria Girls, Rainbow Rocks, is officially out. And while all you fancy people living in populated portions of the world got to go see it in theaters, I had to settle for watching a cam rip at home. But even when the movie is washed out, tilted at an angle, and the sound is poorly mixed, one very obvious thing still shone through. And that is the fact that Rainbow Rocks is awesome. Heck, it was more than awesome. It rocked. I'm not gonna go there. Honestly though, Rainbow Rocks improves on the first movie in every possible way, and this is coming from someone who loved the first movie. Where Equestria Girls dropped the ball, Rainbow Rocks picks it up again, and where Equestria Girls was already amazing, Rainbow Rocks just shines even brighter. So I'm going to split this review into sections where I take a closer look at the individual aspects that all come together to make Rainbow Rocks an absolutely amazing movie. They are story, villains, music, animation, and fan service. So let's get started with the biggest and most important one, the story. Story, as well as general coherency, is probably one of the things that gets criticized the most for the first Equestria Girls. And as much as I enjoyed the first movie, I do have to admit that the story was a pretty big drawback. The first movie tried to be about a lot of things. Was it about Twilight adjusting to being a princess? Was it about this new human world in general? Was it about Sunset Shimmer? Flash Sentry? Was it teaching a lesson about the universality of friendship? Or all or none of the above? It's a bit of a mess, to say the least. But Rainbow Rocks has a much tighter hold on its own story. So if you ask me what Rainbow Rocks is about, then I think I can safely answer. Rainbow Rocks is about Sunset Shimmer seeking to be redeemed for her actions in the first movie and learning more about the magic of friendship in the process. At the start, Sunset Shimmer is shown trying to fit in and become a better friend, but she's not quite getting it yet. For example, she offers to help the CMC with painting their poster, which is nice, but she does so just by grabbing the paintbrush from Sweetie Belle, which isn't so nice. Still, it's clear she's trying, but despite her efforts, she keeps finding herself being sidelined and never really gets to be a part of any of the actual friendship going on. To be fair, she really does have a lot she needs to be forgiven for. Even Twilight is hesitant to take her hand when she arrives in the human world. But as Sunset sees the main six gradually get torn farther and farther apart, she is eventually able to bring them all back together and gets everyone back on their feet during the crucial moment in the climax. This is what I call a complete redemption arc, not like the vague and uncertain one that Discord has going back in Equestria. Sunset Shimmer has made a complete transformation from villain to hero. She's gone from learning about friendship to being the one to teach it. And that brings me to the next thing about the story, the moral. My Little Pony has always been about teaching lessons of friendship, and Equestria Girls is no exception. This is something that I thought was true of the first movie as well, but the simple fact that the Equestria Girls series exists teaches what is probably the most important lesson of all, that friendship is universal. In fact, it's multi-universal. It doesn't matter if you're in a weird parallel world with humans and technology and pop music. Friendship is magic no matter where you are. But Rainbow Rocks takes this lesson a step further. While the first movie said that friendship magic from Equestria still works in another universe, Rainbow Rocks teaches that you don't even need the magic from Equestria at all. The magic of friendship is inside you all along. As corny as it sounds, this is a very real and very important lesson, and a great thing to teach to kids. In the end, Twilight didn't have to write her own musical counterspell. They just used a song that Fluttershy wrote at the very beginning. As long as they have some way to genuinely express their friendship, it works. And genuinely is the important word here. Early on in the movie, the main six attempt to banish the Dazzlings just by shouting "friendship is magic" at them. But it doesn't work. Instead, they just look like a bunch of idiotic hippies. This is another very important lesson about friendship, that it can't be faked or just used whenever it's convenient. Unless there is a real harmony among the people involved, friendship cannot be used to do anything. Once again, a corny sounding but very important moral. All in all, the story in Rainbow Rocks has a level of focus that was sorely lacking in the first movie. It leaves viewers satisfied when the last one just left them scratching their heads. Sure, there are a few things that probably could have been explained more, like Sunset Shimmer's book that is linked with the book in Equestria, although Twilight using the book to force the portal open does actually kind of make sense in a science fiction-y sort of way. I mean, if this was an episode of Doctor Who, I would let it slide. But even with that, Rainbow Rocks' story is remarkably well put together. But there is one aspect of the story that I haven't mentioned yet, because I felt it was worthy of its own section. It is the villains. The Dazzlings are great as villains. Not only are there 3 of them, each with different personalities, which makes for plenty of entertaining moments just watching them interact with each other. Also, Sonata is just the cutest thing ever. But most importantly, they really are threatening villains. They feel genuinely evil, as opposed to Sunset Shimmer in the last movie, who really just felt more like a shallow teenage girl. The Dazzlings are cunning and manipulative monsters who have no problem tearing the whole school apart to get what they want. And they're good at what they do. Sunset Shimmer spent years making her way to the top of the totem pole at Canterlot High, and the main 6 spent an entire movie bringing the whole divided school together. The Dazzlings completely shattered the harmony at the school and got even the principals bowing to their will in the first 15 minutes. Scary. Not to mention their design is really great too. The details and everything from their movements to their wardrobe are a step up from everyone else in the school, which really helps them stand out as the foreign entities they are. And how could I forget, there's something very enchanting about their singing as well, which brings me to the next section, the music. The music is easily the best feature of Rainbow Rocks. The cam rip quality is nowhere close to doing it justice, which is why I'm glad I bought the full soundtrack. I dare say this music is Daniel Ingram's best work. It's just on a whole nother level than what we've heard in the show. It mixes harmonies, backing vocals, and instrumentals unlike anything I've seen before, as well as having some truly amazing vocal talents. I've never been very good at reviewing music. I don't know any of the technical details or terminology involved, not to mention that music is inherently pretty subjective, so it's hard to say much more than I really liked it. But I think there is something I can say that everyone can agree on. The music in Rainbow Rocks has exactly the right amount of variety in it, by which I mean the music is varied enough that it doesn't get samey or boring, and is very different from the music in the show. But the music also has similarities in all the right ways. The music of the Rainbooms and the music of the Dazzlings each have their own unique but definable styles. The same motifs and instruments can be found across their songs. The Rainboom's music is upbeat, fast-paced, and exhilarating, with a strong focus on drums and guitars for the instruments, whereas the Dazzlings' music is slow, with a stronger focus on vocal harmonies and synthesizers. And I know it's kind of the point, but there really is an almost hypnotic quality to it. The music just adds yet another layer to the characterization and stylistic differences between the movie's heroes and villains. Meanwhile, Trixie's song is in a completely unique style of its own, with instrumentals that can really just best be described as, well, tricky. It's kind of a shame that you can only really hear it if you get the soundtrack, because it's only ever played in the background in the actual movie. So while I was listening to the music on its own for over a week now, I was only just able to see them with their visuals, which made them even better. So it's time to talk about the animation. Rainbow Rocks is one visually impressive movie. Even through a cam rip, this was obvious. You thought that weird, trippy intro in the first movie was impressive. You haven't seen anything yet. The opening of Rainbow Rocks has to be one of the coolest animated title sequences I've seen for anything. Ever. Maybe it's just because I'm a big fan of the art style, but I found it to be jaw-dropping. And of course, the rest of the movie has great animation as well. My favorite scenes would have to be the montage during the Dazzlings' Under Our Spell song, which was a great way of showing off the battle, all while reminding the audience that it's the Dazzlings who are really pulling all the strings behind it. And of course, the completely insane and over-the-top finale. And don't forget, almost the whole movie is made in Flash. Do you know how many professionally produced theatrical release Flash animated movies there are? Not a lot, that's how many. Honestly, this movie is borderline revolutionary when it comes to what Flash can do. But, as I've always said, cool lighting and lens flares are only one part of great animation. Another aspect that I consider just as, if not more important, is facial expressions. Facial expressions and body language are very important in cartoons, and can often say even more about a character's thoughts and feelings than the actual dialogue. Just like I am using a humanoid OC to create a greater variety of poses, DHX uses their fancy new human assets to their full potential. The characters here are so much more expressive and active in their movements and faces than they were in the first movie, especially when it comes to the Dazzlings, whose hips hypnotized an entire high school. Also, in true MLP style, the movie is full of small gags and details. Things like Rarity's Daft Punk costume, the Maniac appearing on the cover of this video game, Pinky peeking into Equestria, or how Vinyl Scratch can frequently be seen in the background not paying attention to anything, which actually becomes very important later. It's these little details that make the world feel more alive and are also a lot of fun to look for. And speaking of Vinyl Scratch, fan service. A lot of people tend to look down on things that are obviously nods to the Brony fandom, but to me, complaining about fan service has always just seemed like overly negative people desperately trying to find a way to still be negative after being shown exactly what they wanted to see. Okay, maybe that's a little bit unfair. I do admit there is a point where fan service can be too much. Still, I think unconditionally disliking these small nods is a little bit like being unappreciative of a nice gift. So how much is too much? And is Rainbow Rocks too much? I think I can answer both of those questions. I find a good place to draw the line for too much fan service is if it starts becoming a distraction or seems really out of place for anyone not familiar with whatever meme is being referenced. And personally, I don't think that Rainbow Rocks crosses this line at any point. Where most people see two friends performing a duet, we see our OTP becoming canon. Or where most people see a silly person who luckily dodged the dazzling spell because they never took off their headphones, we see Vinyl Scratch. So yes, Hasbro, I see that nod you put in there. I also see that mod you put in there. And I appreciate the sentiment. So that's the end of the sections I outlined, but before I end this review, there is one more thing I feel I should address. After the credits were finished, we are given a somewhat cryptic sneak peek of Twilight back in the human world investigating Canterlot High. This scene has done something that I thought was impossible. It actually made bronies want to see more Equestria girls. It was just last week when bronies everywhere were saying they really didn't want to see any more of Equestria girls and wanted an actual pony movie for once. But now, everywhere I go, I see people saying they can't wait to see more of the Equestria Girls series. And I like this. It's great to see the fandom united and universally jazzed about something, as opposed to just becoming more divisive and negative like what the first movie did. Perhaps that's one of the best things I can say about this movie. It brought relief on this long hiatus and kicked the fandom back into gear. So if you haven't seen it yet, well, sorry for spoiling, I guess. But even if you weren't sold on the first movie, I highly recommend you see Rainbow Rocks. You absolutely will not regret it. Now, just as Twilight has research to do on Canterlot High, I have some research of my own that I want to do on this mirror portal. So if I throw a wheelchair designed for ponies through, will I get a wheelchair designed for humans out the other end?